Hi, I'm Mark Spencer, President of AquaMetrix, and I'd like to welcome you to this video where we'll show you how to get started with the AquaMetrix 2300. We designed the 2300 user interface to be as simple and intuitive as possible. My belief is that if you need to read the manual, the manufacturer didn't do the job right. Before we get started, let's go over the parts that we'll need. Make sure that you have the mounting hardware that comes with every 2300. You'll need a power cord, an Ethernet cable, and a 2-wire probe to get you started. You also want to make sure that you have a local Ethernet port that is part of your local area network. If you don't have access to your local area network, you can create your own private network using an inexpensive router, like this one from Tenda. A note first on mounting. The 2300 was designed to make panel mounting easy. To that end, you will find 2 mounting blocks on both sides of the unit. To mount the 2300, simply unscrew the mounting screw, slide out the mounting hardware, insert the plastic mounting pieces into the track, and tighten them against the back of the panel with the mounting screw. If you are mounting the 2300 on a surface, then you will want the wall mounting closure, also available from AquaMetrix. First, let's connect the power cord, attach an Ethernet cable, and connect the sensor. We're using an AquaMetrix P65C8, a 2-wire direct output version of our differential pH sensor. All connections are on the back of the unit. The connector block in the middle of the right of the block can connect 4 4-20 milliamp analog sensors. There are 2 terminals that supply 24 volts, 1 terminal that supplies a ground, and 4 terminals for the 4 sensors. Some 4-20 milliamp sensors are loop powered, which means that they obtain their power from the loop itself. Some 4-20 milliamp sensors require more power than that which is available from the loop. These sensors have a 3rd wire for power, so that they are typically called 3-wire sensors. The connection of your sensor depends on whether you have a loop-powered sensor or a 3-wire sensor. Okay, let's connect everything together. I've already wired up the red wire to the 24 volt terminal and the black wire to the analog number 1 in. All I have to do now is insert the connector into the back of the unit. I'm going to plug my AC cord. It's always a good idea to have no power on when you connect it. And I'll take my Ethernet cord and plug it into the back of the unit, into the RJ45 opening. And there you go. Now let's go over setting up the 2300 over the web interface. This is the part where we get all excited. Once you start using this interface, you will never want to use a controller any other way. I'll show you how to control the 2300 with your own local area network. You can view and operate the 2300 outside your local area network from your home or anywhere in the world, but that takes just a little more expertise. You'll find a brief overview in the manual, but if you've never done anything like this before, you want to be very, very careful. Better yet, hire an IT person. Let's set up a 2300 using the web interface. I've already inserted an Ethernet cable into the unit, and now I'm going to plug it in. Notice that the first thing you see is that the front panel display announces that it has an IP address that my router assigned to it. And as you can see, that number is 192.168.1.33. So I go to my laptop and I'm going to type in that IP address 192.168.1.29, and the 2300 sends back a login window. Well, that tells me that I've been successful at establishing communication and asks for my login name and password. All 2300s come with the default name of admin and the password AquaMetrix. The user admin has the highest level of authority, which means that I can do anything I want, and that makes me dangerous. I'll enter my username, admin, and the password, AquaMetrix, all lowercase. And the first time configuration wizard opens up. This first window asks me to give the 2300 a name and choose 2 passwords. The first is for the web interface. You will probably want to replace the default AquaMetrix password with one of your choosing. And the second is a numeric passcode to make changes using the front panel interface. That awaits your decision as to what that should be. So I'm going to call my 2300 desktop demo. I'm keeping AquaMetrix as the password for the web interface, and I'm going to use 01810, the zip code of Andover, as our passcode. This is a passcode. There are only numbers allowed. And by the way, if your 2300 comes pre-configured from us, 01810 will be the default front panel password. Very good. Now I'm going to click Next. And the next configuration wizard allows me to set the time. Most of the time, you will leave the time fields blank, excuse the pun, because the 2300's default is to use the standard NTP time server. So the time is always automatically correct. How's that for convenient? I'll hit Submit. And the next screen allows me to set up email accounts for sending alerts. This is a valuable step, but I'm going to save its configuration for a future video. So for now, let's get right to setting up a sensor. I'll connect the AquaMetrix differential probe with a 4 to 20 milliamp output, the P65C8. The probe configuration screen is already open. We'll see the list of probes connected to the 2300. Right now, there are no probes listed, so I'll click on the first row to start the configuration wizard. First screen asks me to select a probe type. The drop-down menu shows all the possible probe types. Above the dividing lines are real probes. These are 4 to 20 milliamp analog probes and pulsed output probes. Below the dividing line are what we call virtual probes. They're outputs that are created from the outputs of the real probes. We'll address these advanced probe options in another video. For now, let's just concentrate on the analog choice, of which the P65C8 is an example. I'll click on Analog Probe. Now, I have to tell the wizard which input on the analog connector of the 2300 the probe connects to. Now here's a cool feature. Click on the Select Input button, and out pops a picture of the back of the 2300. There are 4 yellow rectangles around the 4 analog inputs. Analog 1, 2, 3, and 4. My probe is connected to input 1. I can click on the yellow rectangle for analog 1. I could also have selected it from the drop-down menu. I'm all set there. I'll click on the next button. The next screen gives us an idea of what's in store for us as we set up and calibrate the probe and set up alarms and relays. First, I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call this probe Demo PH Probe. I'm going to calibrate it using 2 pH calibration standards. So I'll choose linear, 2 points for the calibration type. Click Next, and the next screen is where all the fun began. This is where we calibrate. Calibration has never been easier. First, I'm going to put the probe in pH calibration solution. The big challenge in calibrating any pH probe is knowing when the probe output value settles down so that you can lock in the reading. With the 2300, you can click on Read Milliamp Value as often as you want, so that you can actually check the actual probe reading. You don't lock in the reading until you go to the next screen. So go ahead and click as often as you want until you're satisfied that the reading has settled down. The calibration screen also allows you to enter manually a calibration value instead of taking a live measurement. This is very useful for transferring a previously done calibration to a new probe setup, or when only one calibration point is available. Now, as I wait for the probe reading to settle down, I'll type in the value of the calibration standard. In this case, it's pH 4. Our probe is still settling down in its value, but let's pretend it's reached a final value. Once I'm satisfied that it has, it's time to move on to the next calibration standard. I'm going to remove the probe from the pH standard, rinse it in clean water, and insert it into pH 10 buffer. Swirl the probe around in the solution, and I'll take a few readings again to make sure that the probe has settled down to the new standard. As you can see, it's still going up. As I wait for it to settle down, I'll enter the value of pH 10. Let's make sure the probe reading has settled down. Let's pretend it has. Typically, this will take about 30 seconds to a minute to be sure. There, I'm done calibrating. I clicked on Next, and now I choose my unit of measure and the number of digits that are meaningful. The drop-down menu gives me a choice of most of the common used units, but I can add my own. The unit pH is already on the list, so I'll click on that. No pH reading in a process is capable of accuracy better than 2 places, so I'll enter 2 for the number of digits after the decimal place. And because pH can have double-digit numbers like 10 or 14, that gives us a total number of digits of 4. So a reading might be something like 11.42, for example. Okay, we're done with that. And on the next screen presents a notepad that gives me an opportunity to add a description to the probe. This information is used in the web interface. It appears when you click on the Config button in any of the quad screens. This is a good place to enter information about the probe, make and model, and or details about the process. I'll type in P65C8 probe used for demo, probe in service 12/2/15, process is tap water. Lots of room to write whatever I want into it. Click Next. And the next screen is the one that really shows off the power of the 2300. This is where I can set up relays and alarms. The common term that we use to describe both actions is, appropriately enough, actions. Now, if you're using a firmware version earlier than 1.6.5, then the term used is monitor. An action can be a relay, or it can be an alarm, or it can be an alarm that also accompanies a relay. An action can also send an email or a text message. To explain all the options you have for setting up relays and alarms would take up an entire video. For now, I'll tell you most of what you need to know by setting up 2 actions, one alarm and one alarm with a relay. And to learn more, just read the manual. Let's suppose we have a process in a tank that must be kept below a pH of 8.5. At higher levels, a pump dispenses acid into the tank. Okay, let's set up a relay for that. First, I'll give the relay a name. I'm going to choose high pH control. On the pull-down menu for action type 1, I'm going to choose high relay. Now I have to choose one of 4 available relays, or it could be greater if you had an optional add-in card that has additional relays. That process is just like choosing a probe input. If I click on the select relay button, I get a picture of the relays, each one surrounded by yellow rectangles. I'll choose relay 1. And just as we did before, I could have also chosen that from a drop-down menu. The trip point is clearly 8.5. We don't want our process to go above a pH of 8.5. For a control of a rising process, the reset point has to be less than the trip point. You don't want a reset point that's too close to the trip point, otherwise your relay will be going on and off frequently. So I'll pick 8.2. That's the pH at which the relay turns off. And this is just a relay, so there's no need to send an email when the pump turns on. So I'll keep the no email button. Now let's add an alarm that activates if the pH goes too low. I'm going to click on the button Add Action to repeat the setup process. I'll call this action Low pH Alarm. For action type, I'll choose Low Alarm / Relay, which means that I can add a relay that will also activate in addition to the alarm when the pH dips too low, but I'll decline to, since there is no pump to dispense a caustic solution. So I'm going to leave the relay number at display only, which is to say no relay. I'll choose a pH value of 6.0, below which I do not want my process to go. And since this is a falling process, the reset trip point has to be higher than the trip point. So I'll choose 6.3. This time, I want the 2300 to send me an email message if the process drops below to 6.0. So I'll click on the radio button, Send at Alarm on Point. Whoops, looks like we lost communication briefly. Okay, that does happen. Now, the email configuration screen comes up. I select address to which the email is going. Now remember, we did not set up email at the beginning, but I can do it now if I choose to. And I'm going to set up info@wateranalytics.net. For the subject and the message, I can insert variables, like you see here, system names, that report details on the process like the 2300 name or the alarm trip point. In fact, there are 11 settings and values that you can insert into your email message and your subject. I can even enter multiple email addresses so that several people can receive the message. This is a low pH alert, so my message will say your pH is below 6. Better do something fast. Okay. All right. Everything looks good, so I'll hit submit. And now I'm in the summary screen, which gives me a one-page summary of all of the setup parameters I configured. If I wanted to change any of these parameters, I don't have to go back to the appropriate screen. I can make the change right on this one screen. In fact, I can even calibrate right from the summary screen, right here. Everything looks good, so I'll click on Submit. And I'm back on the probe configuration screen. I can add another probe and set that one up as well. But I'm good for now, so I'll click on the probe status button on the top menu. Now my pH probe is up and running. It's reassuring to see that it's still reading pH 10, which is the pH of my second calibration solution. Anytime I want to check, all I have to do is reload the IP address right up here, 192.168.1.29, right into my web browser. I can check on my pH probe, and I can set up and change any of the settings that I want. Oh, there's one last gem. I can download a data log for any number of days. All I have to do is go back to the probe status page, click on logs, and click on data logs. And there will be a list of data logs, one for each day. I only have to click on one or more of the data logs, and it will automatically download. Now, how cool is that? Once you've used the web interface to control the 2300, you'll never want to push another membrane switch on a front panel again. But the reality is that there are installations in which an operator doesn't always have a computer or smart device available and has to perform some basic functions using a front panel. I'll close this video by showing what you can do with a front panel. If I press the menu button and the View System Info, I can see important parameters such as the name of the 2300, the IP address, the software version, in this case version 1.6.6, the fact that the network is up, and the serial number. I'm going to press Run again, and I'm going to go back to my run screen. The screen shows 4 sensors in one screen, although right now there's only one. If there are more than 4, then I press the down arrow to reveal them. Each of the quad screen shows 3 things: the process variable, in this case 8.73 pH, whether or not an alarm has been activated. Green light means that neither alarms or relays have been activated. A yellow light means that a relay has been activated, as it has here, and a red light means an alarm has been activated. We don't see one here. The up and down triangles show whether or not the process value is increasing or decreasing. As informative as this run screen is, it's limited. To check in on any one probe, just press the right arrow key. If there's more than one probe, I would have to press the right arrow key more than once. This is what we call the detail screen. If an alarm has been triggered, you will see the name of the alarm and the trigger value for the alarm surrounded by a red rectangle. If the alarm has not been triggered, then 2 values will be surrounded by a green rectangle. The same is true for an activated relay, except that the surrounding rectangle, like it is now, is yellow. To get back to the run screen, just hit Run. Now let's hit the menu button one more time. The next menu item is Calibrate/Disable Probe. This allows me to do a calibration on the system without using a computer or smart device. If I choose that option, all I have to do is follow the on-screen instructions to perform the calibrations. I can only perform 2-point calibrations using the front panel control. It's all self-explanatory. Let's go back. Let's see what the other item is. Backup and restore can be a real lifesaver. Once you finish configuring the unit with all your sensors, you can save the configuration in a file on the external microSD card. If you lose your configuration or you want to replicate it on another machine, you can use the Backup Restore utility to reload it. The Advanced menu has some very important functions, but the one you'll find most useful is the network setup. In order to access the Advanced menu, we have to enter our passcode, which we set up as 01810, the zip code of Andover. Remember, this is not a touch screen, so you'll have to use the down arrows and the left right arrows, up down arrows and the left right arrows to select the numbers. 8, 1. There you go. So I've entered my passcode to get into the advanced menu, and one of the most valuable menu items is the network setup. With this network setup, I can configure my 2300 for network access. Most of the network configuration is done automatically for you by your router, but if you want to use fixed IP addressing or view your 2300 from outside your local area network, there are 2 simple entries you need to make. We won't actually do those right now, but you can refer to the manual for setting up a fixed IP address. Let's hit the back button and go back to our Run menu. Let's press the menu again to see what other options we have. The second menu item is very valuable. The Calibrate Disable Probe menu items allows us to calibrate using a 2-point calibration. Hit Perform Calibration, hit Enter, and you see the 2 points on the screen. Just follow the directions or read the manual, and that will guide you through a very common sense calibration procedure. That's a basic overview of the front panel. Once you set up the 2300 through the web interface, you can carry out day-to-day operation through the front panel, just as if it were any other controller. In the next video, I'll show you how to set up a flow sensor and configure a totalizer so that you can use the 2300 to serve as a batch controller or a dispenser. I hope you're getting the message that the AquaMetrix 2300 is one of the most versatile controllers on the market, and it's at a price that really is unprecedented. If you have any questions on the 2300, just call us at 978-749-9949 or drop us a line at info@wateranalytics.net. Thanks for watching.